Transport phenomena are very important when discussing how materials move through things like cells. Transport phenomena have to do with the movement of material from areas of high concentration to low concentration. Concentration being defined as being the number of molecules in some volume. There are a couple of processes by which this can occur. One is diffusion, and diffusion is the motion from one region to the other due to probability. If you have a region that has a high concentration with a lot of molecules that are zipping around, and a region with low concentration, so maybe there was a barrier right here, and then that barrier gets removed, quickly the molecules over here will move over to this side just because of their random motions. So the diffusion rate follows something called Fick's law, and diffusion rate is defined as being the mass per time that goes from one region to the other. And this mass per time depends on a diffusion coefficient, which depends on the material in question and what kind of molecule you're dealing with, times the area, so this would be the area between the two regions, times the difference in concentrations between the two regions divided by the amount of time. So this diffusion rate describes how the atoms from the high concentration region tend to move towards the lower concentration region just because of random motions. Another way in which transportation of a substance from a high concentration to low concentration can occur is through osmosis, and this describes the diffusion of water across a permeable membrane, often in response to a high concentration of something like a salt on one side of the membrane as opposed to the other. So in general, you will have a spread with time. So if you start out with a material focused in one region, then those atoms will spread out over time, and you can look at the width of the spread. So this is the standard deviation of this bump, or the width of the bump, and the width follows a relationship which is twice this diffusion constant times the amount of time. So this describes the spread away from a region with high concentration if you started with all of the material in just one place. Another topic we'll be looking at is surface tension. So the surface of a fluid in general will contract to be as small as possible. So this is why fluid droplets tend to be round. A sphere has the smallest surface area per volume possible, and so fluid droplets try to be round. Here you can tell that the fluid droplets are being squished by gravity a little bit, but if they were not being affected by gravity, so if you see astronauts playing with blobs of fluid in space, those blobs tend to be perfectly round because the surface of the fluid has contracted to have the smallest surface to volume ratio possible. Surface tension also makes it possible for insects like this water strider to skate over the surface of the water. The contraction of the surface of the water under the water strider's feet keeps it afloat. So we can measure the surface tension, and surface tension is represented with the symbol gamma, so that's another Greek letter, and surface tension can be measured as the force exerted on a material that is submerged in the fluid divided by the length of that material. So one way to measure surface tension is to place something like a wire ring just into the top of a fluid and then see how much force it takes to remove the wire ring from the fluid. So we would measure the surface tension then as being that amount of force that's measured by, perhaps you have a calibrated spring or a spring scale measuring this force. So it's the amount of force required to lift the wire loop divided by twice the length of the loop. Why twice? Well, if the wire loop is in contact with the fluid, both the inside of the wire loop and the outside of the wire loop form a boundary with the fluid. So you have to take both of those surfaces into account. And so to count the inside and outside of the loop, we double the length of the wire loop when we're calculating the surface tension. So in the next video, you're going to be watching a demonstration where someone makes a very simple boat and powers it with surface tension. They place a drop of dishwashing liquid on one end of the boat, and dishwashing liquid disrupts surface tension. So on that one side of the boat, there is no longer any surface tension. On the other side, there is surface tension. And so since surface tension always pulls on an object that's immersed in a fluid, the boat will be pulled forward.